Hello everyone, it is me, internationally wanted criminal Bad Empanada, and I'm here because I want to talk to you about a killing of 5 journalists that just happened in Gaza. 5 Al Jazeera journalists were killed in an intentional targeted assassination of journalists, and there are now around 300 journalists who have been killed in Gaza by Israel intentionally for doing journalism during this genocide. This killing is particularly disgusting because it was obviously specifically targeted at these journalists, and it came after a prolonged smear campaign against them by Israel and by pro-Israel propagandists abroad, one of whom we have talked about on this channel before, Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib, designed to paint them as legitimate targets worthy of killing or whatever. Now, it bears mentioning here that even if any of these journalists were somehow like members of Hamas in some capacity or associated with it or, friends with Hamas members or some shit like that, that doesn't actually make them valid targets. Under international law, even if you have, say, a press reporter who is like affiliated with a state or some group, unless they literally are armed and fighting, they are not a valid target. You can't just kill them. But this is irrelevant here because these people were not members of Hamas or whatever. There's no evidence of this. It's made up IDF bullshit. The same thing that always happens. The IDF invents fake documents, gives them to pro-government Israeli newspapers. Those Israeli newspapers post them as if they are true, quoting the IDF, and then morons abroad are like, oh look, it's okay that we massacred these 5 journalists because this one was Hamas. Look at this PDF that the IDF gave us. Definitely 100% real. So this campaign against one of the journalists who was specifically targeted and murdered here was actually started by Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib. Al-Katib, a notable guest, I will add, of the H3's podcast run by Ethan and Klein, began the incitement against Anas Al-Sharif in a coordinated campaign with the Israeli government. He was the first to start posting about Al-Sharif supposedly being Hamas way back in February of this year, 6 months ago. As you can see in this post right here, Al-Sharif was branded as Hamas by Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib in this post, who blamed him for supposedly provoking a security incident by being somewhere with a camera and taking pictures, and who said that he was doing this at the behest of Hamas. It is the opinion of many Palestinian journalists and others close to these journalists and other journalists that Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib is the one who directly incited this murder. Here is just a selection of this. Abdel Halim Abdel Raham, who is an independent Palestinian journalist who has written for outlets like Foreign Policy magazine, Abu Bakr Abed, a Palestinian photojournalist from Gaza, and Idris Ahmad, the associate editor of New Lines magazine. Aside from the fact that the H3 podcast invited Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib onto their show and allowed him to spout pro-Israel propaganda, they also solicited donations to the Atlantic Council, which is the pro-Israel organization that Ahmed works for whom he directly incites against journalists and calls for their murder. Not just in this case, by the way, he's done this before, as he posted just a month ago saying that propagandists for what he called the Iranian regime, Hamas, Hezbollah, Shia militias, etc., are not true journalists and are not off limits and they shouldn't be untouchable. And now his words are being put into action directly against journalists who he calls in hits on. On the H3 production subreddit, Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib is known as the base legend. No wonder they donated thousands of dollars to his pro-Israel organization. They clearly very much align with his calls to massacre and kill journalists, which then result in the killing of these journalists. This should be the end for everyone involved in this. They should have no career ever. They should go into hiding. And the fact that that's probably not going to happen to them says it all about the state of the world that we live in. We are approaching 300 journalists massacred in Gaza on the incitement of people like this. It's not the first time it's happened and won't be the last. Barry Weiss famously called for the murder of Refat al-Harir, which then swiftly resulted in his killing. The Israeli state watches this stuff. They look at the pulse of people. They check how well they think their propaganda is working. And if they think that the smears by their propagandists against certain journalists are adequate enough, they then kill that journalist, because they know that those people will then defend their murder immediately afterwards. In this case, though, thankfully at least, there is heat coming down on Ahmed. Ahmed immediately posted, lukewarmly denouncing this on his Twitter account. Journalism should not be a crime and should not be a cause for losing one's life, no matter how uncomfortable and unpleasant the reporting of journalists can be. Same fucking guy who a month ago directly said that he thinks journalists who disagree with him should be killed. Same guy who is the one who literally originated the smears against a specific journalist who was killed. This is the state of the world that we live in now. Something has to be done about this. Something has to be done about these people whose words literally directly result in murder. There is a racial genocide going on in Gaza on the behest of the supposedly representative Jewish state of Israel. They are massacring Palestinians for not being Jews. And people like Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib and Ethan Klein are literally spreading propaganda that directly results in the killing of specific named people. What more is there to say here?